Welcome back. We're to a third segment with Ryan Vaughn. Paul Ogden is my co-host. I'm Mark Small. We're here on Civil Discourse Now. It's a beautiful autumn day. We're shooting on October 15th.
Thanks to global warming. It's nice and warm outside, Mark.
October 15th, 2011. Our guest is Ryan Vaughn. We're shooting from Big Cat Books, which is at 6510 Cornell in the Broad Ripple area of Indianapolis. It's on the north side of Indianapolis. Big Hat Books has a really neat selection of books, including Crime Pays, a novel that I wrote. So if you get a chance, come down here to the bookstore. Also, they have space here to rent for special occasions, and it's a really nifty place. Ryan Vaughn is president of the City-County Council here in Indianapolis. Despite setbacks in undergraduate years in an institution of somewhat questionable learning. We were talking about what three issues he would look at. The second one he had mentioned was infrastructure deficit. And we had a question from our audience. And the question had to do with, let me summarize, we sold off the Indianapolis Water Company to capitalize infrastructure development. What are we going to do in 20 years when these things deteriorate? I mean, whatever it is we are improving today in infrastructure, that's why we have to pay for it now, is that it deteriorated over time. What do we do then?
Sure. The question is a perfect example of why we need to do the work we're doing right now, because what we're addressing is not what would be routine annual maintenance. What we're addressing is a $1 billion deferred maintenance backlog. So when this city failed to address, under leadership of both parties at some points, failed to address the needs of the infrastructure over the last several decades, those needs annually accumulated to where we are now. So we really need to address this deferred maintenance. The ongoing maintenance, which has always been and will continue to be part of our operating budget of the city. That is part of your property taxes. That is part of the gas tax you pay that comes back down to us. And part of that is what federal government collects in taxes, which we then match. So what we've got to do is eliminate the backlog and then budget responsibly going forward on the annual ongoing maintenance.
One thing I tried to ask about, I didn't do a good job of phrasing it, was when it rains here in parts of the city, water runs into the sewers and they overflow. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a mandate from the federal government to address that problem. What are we doing to address that problem? Sure,
there is a federal consent decree that was signed to the Peters administration that required us to take the pollution rate down from, I can't even remember the exact numbers, but in essence, every time it would rain a certain level, it would overflow the sewage and rainwater into the river. What the consent decree requires is that happen now less than 2 times a year. And so in order to make that happen, we have to improve our wastewater treatment. We have to improve the flow of our water, stormwater. And we've agreed to do that and entering into the consent decree. What we've done, and what Director David Sherman of Public Works has done under Mayor Ballard, is 2 things. One, we've taken that 30-year, $3 billion program and more aggressively timetabled it to complete it in 15 years. And we've also renegotiated and re-engineered part of the project so that it cost half as much. So we're on a much more aggressive pace to get to cleaner water in Indianapolis and to get to better flow of our stormwater. And we were able to do that and save a considerable amount of money in the process.
Okay. The third issue. Let's move on to that. We talked about fiscal responsibility. You talked about infrastructure improvements. What's the third issue that the city can address?
Well, I think the city always needs to be primarily focused on protecting the public. You know, public safety needs to be an ongoing issue. We've done well over the last 4 years to combat certain levels of crime. We need to stay focused and do better. Part of that, I believe, means reforming the way we're doing policing. We adopted a more community policing model which I think has been helpful, but we also really need to take advantage of technology which is out there. There is technology really available that allows you to attack crime almost as it's occurring, and to hotspot crime and track where your officers are and where they're investigating, and deploy your resources more appropriately, which is not only cost effective, but it is also a great crime fighting tool in public safety. Also, part of that is really our communications and our reports. We need to be more transparent, and we need to be more thorough in the way that we address and report crime. We have a system now which is somewhat antiquated that will have to be upgraded so that people in the neighborhoods know what's happening in their neighborhoods. They have easy access to the information, and also it's easier for the police to digest so that they can understand what's happening out there.
Do the cameras work? I know they put cameras at certain hot spots in the city. I've heard people say that they capture crimes and deter crimes. Then I've heard other people argue that really you're just moving it from one place to another, that these people actually find out where the cameras are and they avoid those areas.
I would say both of those statements are true.
Okay.
They do work. They do capture criminal activity, but they're mostly their biggest impact is a deterrent impact, and so the fact that they're mobile or somewhat mobile helps us put them in hotspot crime areas. But you're never completely eliminating crime. What you're doing is driving it out of areas, or if you can saturate areas with officers, then you can also drive crime down and arrest the folks that are responsible for it. So.
And maybe I'm coming at it from a different perspective. Actually, I am. I mean, the people we're talking about, as far as the people who are criminals, they're people who
alleged criminals.
Alleged, yeah, but people who commit crime, I mean, they weren't born to be criminals. I mean, they were acculturated and grew up in society and developed into a pattern of behavior that presumably we can deter by having adequate schools and having adequate provision of services for kids, so that kids end up, instead of going into a life of crime, they go into
politics.
No, well,
Which would be life of crime.
No, they could go worse medicine, but they could do something productive and not be going into crime.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that our greatest crime fighting tool is early intervention. There have been a number of initiatives that we have started over the last 4 years that are aimed at that. We have the, I always get this wrong, juvenile detention alternative, that escapes me, but the gist of it is that first-time offenders or low-level offenses of juveniles that come in don't go and sit in juvenile detention incarcerated. They're sent back to homes or facilities that are aimed at rehabilitating them. You know, I was a deputy prosecutor for almost 5 years, and I used to refer to juvenile hall as criminal college, right? Because you take the kid who is caught being truant and you put him in the same cell as the kid who just mugged a guy with a handgun. Well, the kid that mugged the guy with a handgun doesn't become truant. The truant guy becomes the one that becomes.
Were you out of juvie at all?
I spent some time out there.
No, I had cases out there
Yeah.
too, and that's, I agree. It's the question of early deterrence, and the thing is, sending them to their homes that they're sent to, or
They're back home, so they're detained. They have daily reporting, or there are all kinds of alternatives to incarceration at the juvenile level, which has proven to be effective. The recidivism rate for the juveniles that are going through these alternative programs is considerably lower than the ones who are incarcerated for their crimes.
I was going to say, because having gone out to juvie, I wonder about the kids who are sent home with parents, and sometimes that's a cause of the problem, is the home itself. And I'm not talking Big Brother here,
No, I
where I'm
understand
saying
that.
we control the home, and so we get people to think and behave as they should. But I think if a kid's getting beaten on or being abused or learning patterns of behavior that are wrong, they're gonna copy those, and they're gonna end up in the system. And once they're in the system, after a certain point, they're in the system. So that's and so like in terms of public safety, I think that a long-term issue has to be an emphasis on education and getting people to learn and learn the right things.
There's no doubt about it. You know, the Early Intervention Planning Council, which was established by the council before I came on, worked with university IU professors to develop a programmatic approach to getting to kids while they were in school or getting to kids that weren't going to school, and setting up a support system outside of the home that they can rely on to sort of walk them through education and make sure that they were growing up the right way, in essence. I mean, getting the education they need, getting the nutrition they need so they can become educated. All of these things are part of what's happening. And that will always be our greatest tool in fighting crime is early intervention and being present and identifying those kids most at risk.
Well, and I've always thought that a kid starting in school in the morning with an empty belly, I mean, every kid should be able to start school with food in his or her stomach. I mean, we should have the school providing lunch. School should provide breakfast. I think studies show that kids need breakfast.
I think a lot do, don't they? I mean,
some do, but I think that every kid. I don't care what community it is. If it's
so our government should provide 3 meals a day, Mark?
No, 2. Dinner should be at home.
Dinner should be at home.
And should be fixed by a mom who stays at home during the day because she doesn't have a career. Because that's what. No. I'm saying that at least 2 of those meals should be provided at the school so that the kids can learn, so they don't have to worry about their stomach growling.
Yeah. One of the things that didn't they change the law that you used to be able to drop out of school at 16 with your parents' permission? I don't believe you're allowed to do that anymore. I think they've changed that law.
No.
3 lawyers here, and I thought
the problem we have. I mean, the Star article today was a good example, or maybe it was yesterday. Maybe I'm getting them confused. It's not so much that the kids are recognizing that they're legally able to now not go to school. It's they just don't go, or the parents don't enforce that they're going. And so, you know, attendance rates at some of the most challenging schools are staggering.
What's the Star?
The paper, the Indianapolis Star.
Facetious.
Well, one of the things that I've had to put up with dealing with Mark, Ryan, is talking about DePaul. DePaul is the greatest thing ever. It's refreshing to have someone on from his chief rival. If you were counseling a young person coming out of high school and going to college, why should that person go to Wabash as opposed to DePaul?
You know, I would tell you this, and I would love to take a great shot at DePaul right now, but college really sort of changed my life. I was an average student at best in high school, mostly because I didn't pay that much attention to what I was doing.
In college.
Right.
I'm serious.
Yeah. But you really got to find what fits you. And I knew that if I went to a big school like IU or Purdue, I'd become a number. I would easily get lost in the crowd and probably graduate at a very low GPA. So for me, it was just a self-awareness that I needed to go to a school that had a discipline to it that would keep me in line.
I knew I had to go to a school that I wouldn't get lost in, and I felt comfortable going to DePaul. Plus, if I had gone to a school that wasn't co-ed, I don't know what I would never. I would still be. Anyways, one last thing, and then we're wrapping up because we're almost done with this segment.
Sure.
Wabash's football record this year. What is it?
Undefeated.
It's like 4-0.
Yeah, 5-0 today, hopefully.
I think DePauw's 1-4. That means we're going to win the bell on November 12th. The show is going to be on November 12th, a discussion of the value of single-gender post-secondary education. Today, this is Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small, co-host Paul Ogden. Ryan Vaughn has been our guest. Ryan, thank you for coming on. And thank you for our audience being here and the valuable question we had from. Thank you very much.
47-0.
Couple of examples.